Welcome to the Town of Avon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. If you're interested in having a copy of the agenda or staff reports, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that all personal conversations are kept to a minimum, and all cell phones are set to vibrate with any phone calls taken outside the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during any public hearing, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to staff or the appellant. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. A 3-minute time limit should therefore be imposed on each person. Federal law requires that the town make available to all attendees a Title VI public enrollment survey. Those surveys are on the table to the right of the audience. Members of the public who wish to complete this survey may do so and place them in the designated area. If because of a disability, any person in attendance needs assistance or accommodation to fully participate in this meeting, please notify staff. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting, and welcome to our meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call for attendance, please.
Paul Dukenberger.
Here.
Ann Inman.
Here.
Catherine Ransberg.
Here.
Marcy Tashler.
Present.
Marcus Turner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from January 20th, 2022. Anyone have any questions or concerns? If there are none, we'll entertain the motion.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of January 20th, 2022 as written.
A motion by Mrs. Inman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Berger. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Next item is requests for continuances or agenda modifications.
None this month.
And we have no old business tonight, so we will get right along with new business. First item is VAR 22-01, the Jim Romer Pole Barn.
Okay, first up, we have variance 22-01 Romer Pole Barn. This is a request for approval of a variance of development standards to allow for an accessory structure that is not subordinate in height to the primary structure. This property is located 5219 East County Road 200 South, Avon, Indiana 46123. It's located just southwest of the intersection of East County Road 200 South and South County Road 525 East. That's south of town. Here we have a location map. As you can see, 525 East in the upper right-hand corner there, and the property fronts along East 200 South there. It's a rather large property. It's 6.13 acres, and it's zoned to agriculture. It's improved with a single-family residence. And it also contains an 800 square foot accessory structure, and that's just east of the subject structure. The surrounding uses are predominantly agricultural in nature, with some single-family uses in the nearby area. Here we have the surrounding zoning of the property. As you can see, predominantly agriculture indicated in green there. The property across the street was previously agriculture, and that was rezoned by the Plan Commission late last year in order for it to be subdivided. We got some single-family residences in the upper left-hand corner of the picture here, and R1A in the upper right-hand corner. The single-family residence was constructed in 1968, and it was annexed into the town in 2012 with a zoning designation of agriculture. as part of the Southwest Township annexation, and that was ordinance number 2012-01. So we'll talk about the applicable standards here, why we're here. As I mentioned before, it's a request for a variance of development standards to allow for an accessory structure that is not subordinate in height to the primary structure. So Chapter 22 Agriculture District, Section 3, states that accessory uses and structures are permitted within the AG Agriculture District in conjunction with a principal use or structure, provided such uses are, and there are 3 criteria. The first is that they're on the same lot as the principal use or structure. That's been met. We'll jump to number 3. It's not injurious to the character of the district. We find that to be met. And 2 is the standard in question, that the accessory structure be customarily incidental to and subordinate of the principal use or the structure. So you may ask yourself, what does customarily incidental and subordinate of mean? That's further fleshed out within the definition for accessory use or structures in our ordinance. And it states that 1 is incidental to and serves a principal building or principal use. And 2 is that it is subordinate in height, area, extent, and purpose to the principal structure or principal use served. So I'm going to go over some background on how we ended up here. The appellant has constructed a 40 by 60 pole barn prior to obtaining a permit, or they had. The appellant then, of his own accord, came and applied for the building permit. This was not a result of an enforcement action. He came in on his own. When reviewing that permit, our building department found that it didn't meet the standards I previously mentioned, and that it exceeded the height of the primary structure and therefore was not subordinate by section 22-03. So talk about the building, the subject building. It's a pole barn and the height is 19 feet, 6 inches tall, and the residence is 13 feet tall. The residence is 3,621 square feet in area, whereas the subject pole barn is 2,400 square feet in area. So while it may not be subordinate in height, it is subordinate in area. The appellant does state that the intended use of the structure is for a personal automobile hobby shop. In his letter of intent, he asserts that the height of the pole barn is necessary to allow for the installation of an automobile lift and to allow for recreational vehicle storage. So here we have photos, side-by-side comparison of the 2 buildings. On the left is the residence. That would be the primary structure. It may be hard for you to see. There are photos included in your staff report. The residence, the primary structure, is 10 feet tall from the floor to the ceiling, with 3 feet of roof line or roof height. You'll notice that there is 7.5 feet of chimney. So if the chimney were included, it would actually be taller than the pole barn. But the ordinance defines building height, and it does not include things such as chimneys. On the right, we have the subject pole barn. That is 13 feet in height from the floor to the ceiling. And then we have 6 feet, 8 inches of roof structure above that, totaling a 19 feet, 6 inches. So that's about 6 feet, 8 inches taller than the primary structure. Here's a site map of the house in comparison to the proposed pole barn. You'll notice that the house is a significant distance away from the subject structure. It's about over 500 feet away, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more later. So we do find that the height and the nature of the pole barn is consistent with the character of the surrounding properties. That stretch along East 200 South does contain numerous large accessory structures, all of similar height to the subject structure, being that it's an agricultural district. So it's unlikely that this pole barn will be detrimental to the use, enjoyment, and values of properties in the immediate vicinity. So we get into practical difficulty. What is practical difficulty here? It can be argued that the practical difficulty is the height of the residence. At 13 feet tall, the residence is rather short, making construction of an accessory structure larger than a small garage challenging under the standards of the ordinance. And we feel that it creates a practical difficulty in utilizing the land consistent with the character of the surrounding properties and for the permitted use proposed by the appellant. Staff believes that the intent of this standard is to maintain aesthetic harmony and to limit the propensity for the structure to be used in an illegal, unpermitted manner. We find that the subject structure's distance from the primary structure, with the separation by a wooded area, we find that it meets the intent of the standard as it pertains to aesthetic harmony. So as you're driving by, you can hardly tell that this pole barn is even associated with the house, given the distance and the intersecting wooded area there. So we feel that the aesthetic harmony is maintained there. And our recommendation on the conditions within the staff report, we feel as though those address the second intent of the ordinance, and those are a reiteration of standards in the ordinance that would be required anyways. But that's just to reaffirm that objective there. So while the building is not subordinate in height, staff does find that it is subordinate in area, extent, and purpose to the principal structure and still meets the overall intent of the standards for the reasons stated. Second one is the appeal not a result? This appeal is not a result of enforcement action taken by the town, as I mentioned previously. Although occurring after the construction of the pole barn, the appellant did apply for the necessary permit of his own accord. So it could be argued that although he did build it and come in for a variance, had he applied for the permit prior to construction, he'd likely still be before you today asking for a variance. The appellant does argue that it's necessary because he wants to build an automotive lift. We do find that the proposal is consistent with requirements of the zoning ordinance and the findings associated with a variance of development standards appeal. Lastly, because I'm sure you're wondering, should this request be denied, the appellant would have three reasonable courses of action. One is to demolish the building in its entirety and return the property to its original state. Two, structurally alter the pole barn to be shorter in height than the primary structure. And three, structurally alter the residence to be taller in height than the pole barn. I really thought about it, and I don't see any other paths to compliance there. With that, we do recommend approval of this petition, subject to the following conditions: that the automotive service at the property shall be conducted as a hobby on personal vehicles of the tenant of the primary use, and no commercial use of the structure shall be permitted. As I said, this is a reiteration of a standard already within the ordinance. And two, outdoor storage of inoperable vehicles or vehicles in a state of disrepair shall be prohibited. That is also a standard within the ordinance that we are reiterating within our recommendation. With that, I am available for questions.
Anyone have questions for staff? Then we are ready to hear from petitioner. Or appellant, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the help that you gave. The reason I need sit down. Sorry. The reason I need the building to be that high is obviously for an automotive lift to do the work that I want to do in there, which is going to be undercarriage work on rusted out older cars, things of that nature. I need to be able to get the car in the air, get it on a rotisserie.
I mean to interrupt. I believe the petitioner is supposed to state his name and address first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my name's Jim Romer. I'm sorry. And my address 5219 East County Road, 200 South. And again, the reason why I need it that high is just to be able to do the work that I want to do on the cars that I intend to restore in that facility. That was really the only intent for the height.
Anyone have any questions?
So this is a for-profit business?
No.
On your property, or?
No, this is just to work. Yes.
Hobby, collect cars and you work on?
Yes.
And, I'm sorry,
I apologize. I always thought I talked pretty loud. And so that being said, I'm not familiar with your property. So can you highlight for me, especially kind of what you border there? I mean, I got the street coordinates. What does the rest of that look like? What's behind? What's behind?
What's
I
behind
guess?
us is.
That's kind of what I want to know.
On the south side of us is 75 acres of farmland. It's either corn or beans. To the east of us is essentially the corner of Vestal Road, which is also farmland on both sides of that, other than one small house. The north side of us is the parcel that he talked about that just got changed to residential. I think they want to try to build something over there. I still don't think they can, but we'll see what happens over there. But there's really just woods around us. So on the north side's woods, behind us is farm field. On the left side of us, our neighbor has quite a big farm, 20 or 30 acres. And their house is, as you can see in that picture, is you can't see it from our house. It's way back in the woods. So mainly it's surrounded by woods. The barns themselves are right next to each other and they're surrounded by woods. So they're visible from the street, but you can't see them you really can't see either of them from even our house.
So follow up to that, have you spoken, I'm sure you have, with your neighbor that would adjoin that or not? I mean, have you had any discussion about your plan with?
Well, we did, when we originally bought the house, we told them that we intended to build a barn there because we were clearing dead trees out of the area. The area where the barn is now was originally a horse run, so it didn't have any trees in it. But there was a lot of dead ash trees around it, so we were clearing all those out. And when he came over and met us, we told him that's what we were doing with it. And he didn't act like it was any big deal. And we did send letters to all our neighbors and stuff.
And no negative?
No negative. It's not visible from his property either. The barn isn't.
I guess I might as well monopolize your time.
That's all right.
I'm curious about noise. I'm curious about what your plan is for working. How do you work during the day? Do you do something else and work at night? Do you see where I'm going with that a little bit? Okay.
So I don't think there isn't anybody close enough to us that would hear noise. I don't believe. If you could, I would be very surprised. But the barn, when it's eventually done, which will be a while, it'll be spray foamed. And so it'll be pretty quiet from the outside. You won't be able to hear much. The loudest equipment that I would use would be a grinder. And they're kind of loud, but I still don't believe you'll be able to hear it outside. And definitely a neighbor's not going to hear it.
Mr. Romer, I'd like to ask, why did you not ask for this permit or this waiver prior to building the barn?
So when I did come in to get a permit, and when I first came in to get a permit, they told me that I needed to get a survey. So I said, okay. So I went to get a survey, and I was on a list to get a survey for over a year. And as time was going by and things started happening with the metal and wood and all that stuff getting increasingly expensive, I went ahead and bought the package to build it so that I didn't get stuck paying $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 more for the barn than I would have paid just a few months prior to that. Well, then still waiting on surveys. The wood package that I had was sitting in that area, and it was deteriorating. So I knew I had to do something pretty quick. So that's when I came in and told them that I needed to get a permit. And believe it or not, the guys that built that barn, they built it in a week. So it was up quick when I came in with the survey and the permit. And then they came out and looked at it. And that's when I found out about the height variance.
So you were not aware that there was, no one spoke to you and you didn't find any information telling you you'd have to get a waiver on the height during this process prior to the barn actually being constructed?
No, I didn't. I didn't know about the height. No.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have one more. Imagine that.
That's okay.
So So you need every bit of that extra height to accommodate the lift, right? I'm sure you've measured and shopped around and know what piece of equipment you need. So you need every bit of that. There's no wiggle room there,
No.
right?
No. Yeah, there's a minimum height for lifts, and that's the minimum height for the wall height. And then after that, your gables are just, the structural, what needs to be structurally to hold up that side of the wall. So yeah, I had to have that many feet high.
Any more questions? Then at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is anyone signed up to speak?
Who's already spoken for this particular petition.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Hello, this particular subject. This is a public comment.
Okay. And then with that, we will close the public hearing. Discussion.
I don't object to the request for the waiver. I'm just concerned that although Mr. Romer appropriately requested a permit, that somehow in that process, he was not aware that he would have to ask for a waiver. And I don't know if that's a function of not enough due diligence on his part, or if that's a function of something that we need to be more proactive on. But I think that his property it's certainly an appropriate location for having that kind of accessory building, especially considering that there are other properties that have similar accessory buildings in the area. I don't see this as being intrusive on any of his neighbors or anything.
I wanted to say, first of all, I was very impressed with the staff report on this one. I thought you did a very nice job. I'm pretty much in line with everything the staff report says on all the issues. Of course, for me, it always boils down to practical difficulty. This is in an ag district. It's not in a residential, so you don't have small lots. You don't have, the accessory uses are, even when I read this, I had problems figuring out how do you determine what's primary and what's accessory. I mean, you could have a house and a barn. You could have all barns. You could have a chicken coop and a field. I mean, there's just all sorts of combinations you can have. And I was struggling with, well, which one's primary and which one's subordinate. In this case, it's pretty easy. Which one was there first? As far as the practical difficulty issue goes, again, I've never accepted that ignorance is a practical difficulty. And thankfully, I don't think we had to use that one here. I think Ian came up with something really important. In an ag district, it's perfectly reasonable to expect, especially on a lot of this size and with this kind of, with the borders it has and the wooded areas and everything, you should expect to have barns. And no one makes 13-foot tall barns. It's, I guess to me, it's almost one of those rules that we should put on the list for Plan Commission to go back and look at and say, what was your intent in even writing this? You expect there to be barns on agricultural uses, and they need to be taller. So just set the limit and let's get rid of this other stuff. I'm going off in the weeds here and getting away from the task at hand. But anyways, I agree with what the staff report says, and especially on the issue of practical difficulty.
And I also agree with staff report's recommendation that the condition be that this be used strictly as a private hobby, that there be no opening for there being even any kind of commercial, I'm going to fix up my friend's truck kind of thing. This needs to be purely for private purposes only.
So it just brings up that, just make sure that the petitioner understands the conditions, that if we add those conditions to the motion, you're comfortable with that as far as like, or understand what would be imposed on you. There's no outside storage of, okay.
The reason why I need to pay the bid, I want to keep the cars. We're proud of the house, so we don't want to put like a junkyard.
Yeah.
So we need a facility that we can keep that stuff outside.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Dan Inman here. I would like to move that we approve variance 22-01, a variance of development standards of section 22-3 of the Town of Avon zoning ordinance to allow for an accessory building not subordinate in height to the principal use or structure, subject to the following conditions. Automobile service at the property shall be conducted as a hobby. No personal vehicles of the tenant of the primary use. No commercial use of the structure shall be permitted. And number two, that outdoor storage of inoperable vehicles or vehicles in a state of disrepair shall be prohibited. On the basis that it has satisfied all the requirements for variances under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
We have a motion by Mrs. Inman. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Tashler. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Paul Guckenberger,
4.
Ann Inman,
4,
Catherine Ransberg,
4,
Marcy Tashler,
4.
Marcus Turner.
4. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is SE 22-01 Swenson's Drive-In Restaurant Drive-Thru.
All right, special exception 22-01 Swenson's drive-through. This is a request for approval of a special exception to allow for a drive-through facility in Tier 1 of the US Highway 36 Overlay Zoning District. It's located at 8894 US Highway 36, Avon, Indiana, 46123. It's located just north of US 36 at Lot 5 of the Harvest Landing Commercial Subdivision. I refer to it as the Costco Commercial Subdivision. May better help you. There's Lot 5 there. As you can see, just across the street are several car dealerships, and it fronts along US 36. There's a surrounding zoning, predominantly commercial. And here we have just a concept plan of what is proposed. You'll notice that it isn't, in fact, you don't see a drive-through there, and we'll touch on that briefly later. Some history on the lot. Historically, it's been agricultural production and single-family residential use. As we all likely know, the property was rezoned from R1 to C2 under Plan Commission case ZA 20-02, and that was approved by council in December of 2020. There was a primary plat that was filed under case number MAPP 20-15, and that was approved by the Plan Commission on March 3rd, 2021. And final plat was filed under case number MAPF 20-1. To date, there have been 4 development plan review petitions for lots within this commercial subdivision, Harvest Landing. We have Costco Warehouse, we have the Costco Fuel Station, Harvest Landing lot number 7, that's a commercial strip development, and Raising Cane's. 2 of those had been approved special exceptions for drive-through facilities within Tier 1 of the US Highway 36 Overlay District. That's lot 7 and lot number 3, Raising Cane's. As mentioned before, they're seeking to allow a drive-through facility located on lot number 5 of the Harvest Landing Commercial Subdivision. The ordinance requires the grant of a special exception for drive-throughs in Tier 1 of the 36 overlay. The ordinance defines drive-through facility as an accessory facility, structure, or portion thereof that is designed, intended, or used for transacting business with customers located in motor vehicles. Drive-through facility shall not include an automobile filling station or any use that is otherwise listed specifically in a zoning district as permitted or a special use. So that's important here because while the proposed use does not meet the strict, or does meet the strict definition of a drive-through facility, it's not your typical drive-through with a lane and a service window, and bypass lane. It's a drive-in. You pull into the parking lots and they come out and they serve you your food. But it does meet the strict definition, therefore we're requiring a special exception for that. There's one other similar use within Tier 1 of the US 36 overlay district. And that's Sonic, located on Raceway Road in 36. They did receive a special exception, SE 08-03, for a drive-through facility within Tier 1. But we'll note that they do also have a traditional drive-through lane and window, whereas Swenson's does not. We do believe that the proposal is consistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the findings associated with the special exception petition. We do recommend approval of this petition subject to the following condition, that the approval is subject to the review and approval of a development plan review petition in accordance with section 4-8.3 of the Avon zoning ordinance. With that, I'm available for questions.
Questions for staff? I gotta tell you, I'm perplexed by this one. And I think you foreshadowed what I was going to ask you when you introduced this thing. Yeah, Exhibit B, where is the drive-through? There isn't one. So am I to understand that the intent here is that people are going to drive in, park in a spot, have their food delivered to them, and drive away? Is that accurate?
Yep.
Okay, so.
That or
so-
eat within their car.
Okay, so over the next 6 months, are we going to see a flood of variance requests come in from places like Cheddar's, where I do exactly that? I call in my order, I drive over, I park in the parking lot, they bring me my food, I drive away. Are we really going down that rabbit hole?
I mean, I can't speak on that. I just felt that this use did meet the definition of a drive-through facility.
And what gives me what gives me pain here is, I guess you could view it a couple ways. You know, we're dragging somebody in who doesn't need to be here, and I just want to get them out of here. But on the other hand, I'd be hesitant to support approval of this thing just based on the fact that they don't need it. And if they go out in 5-10 years, someone else is going to come in, pick up that same facility, and now suddenly they're entitled to that use that we granted the special exception for that was never on the site to begin with. That's a problem. We don't.
I have a question, and maybe this is more a question that should go to the petitioner, but I'm not familiar with Swenson's. Is this like Sonic? It is standard. You go to any Sonic restaurant and that is what you see. You see the pull in, like, Dog and Suds used to be, except nobody has roller skating waitresses anymore. But is this standard for Swenson's restaurants to have that kind of setup? Do you know, Ian?
Sorry.
I mean, as my understanding is, their business model is a drive-in service. They have, from what I've seen, they have the trays that go in the windows, and it's served similarly to a Sonic.
So I don't see this as being opening the door to anything, because otherwise other restaurants would have already been replicating it after Sonic was approved. If this is part of Swenson's standard business model, and I can just from my own personal experience, there's a restaurant that I go to, I regularly call in, and last year they had set aside certain parking spots so that you could call in your order and then you let them know when you were there, and then they brought your food out to you. Well, then they've now stopped doing that as the COVID situation has changed. I just don't see Cheddar's or Texas Steakhouse or any of these other restaurants deciding that they need to do that, particularly when they're already having issues with staffing. I think this is part of their standard business model. I don't see it as opening the door. If restaurants wanted to do it, they would have already been requesting it. And that's a pretty big, that's a pretty big ask to go from your standard business model, like you might see at Red Lobster or Longhorn or anything like that, to suddenly completely changing the way you do business. I just don't see that as something that's going to happen. I don't see the benefit if they aren't already doing it.
Any more questions for staff?
Yeah, I got two questions on, when I'm looking at the lot layout here, Ian, as far as like, it looks like there's maybe a third of the lot would be undeveloped. Is that true?
And that would be fleshed out more in the development plan review, but that's my understanding.
Okay, so good point. So what we're looking at is a conceptual design, it's not the final design.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, sorry.
As far as when we're looking at all the parking spaces, so based off what you described, and we'll hear more from the petitioner, but that each parking space would be a place to have food delivered to that car in that parking space. So all the perimeter ones.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we'll note that this petition was as a result of them applying for a development plan review. At the time that they had applied for the development plan review, it was determined that they would need a special exception.
They would.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I have a question. More of a confirmation. So to be clear, this is going to be set up like Sonic, or are we talking about, because Sonic actually has a drive-through as well as slots where you go in, press a button, and someone on roller skates delivers your food, right?
Yeah,
Is
I'm
that
not,
right.
I'm not
Are
exactly.
we talking, sorry, am I comparing apples and oranges or apples and apples?
I think that would be a question that would be better answered by the
Might be
appellant.
better.
Yes.
And you touched on it, Paul. Again, our job here is to approve the right to have the concept of the drive-through and the actual elements of the drive-through, which have traditionally been things like, the lanes and the stacking and the actual traffic associated with a drive-through versus conflicts with who's using the parking spaces. Those are things that are reviewed by the Plan Commission. Okay, any last questions for staff? Are we ready to hear from petitioner?
Hello, members of the board. My name's Eric Smith. I'm the Director of Construction for Swenson's Restaurants. My address is 680 East Cuyahoga Falls Avenue, Akron, Ohio, 44310. We're excited to be bringing our restaurant chain to Avon, Indiana. This is our first site in Indiana. So, obviously I think that's why you're not familiar with us. We're a brand that started in 1934 with one restaurant in Akron, Ohio. It's a nostalgic type restaurant. It is not a traditional drive-through as you think. There is no stacking. There's not a window. We're not delivering food through a window. In working with your planning department, we sort of fall in between the two definitions of restaurants. We're not sit down inside seating with, served inside. You are comparing apples and oranges with Sonic. I don't like to compare us to Sonic, obviously. So to explain what we are, we are a nostalgic drive-through. So the spots that you see on the plan are potential customer spots. Obviously some of those spots are for employee parking. We usually, a lot, a portion of those spots for employees. You pull up into the restaurant, you pull into a parking space with your lights facing the restaurant. You turn your lights on for service. A curb server runs out to your car. They take your order. We run that back in. All the food is cooked, made to order. Then the food is delivered to the car, either in a bag or in a bag on a tray, depending if you're taking your order to go or if you're eating in the lot. The tray hangs on your window, either facing out in, good weather or facing in inclement weather. The infield, we call it, which are the spots that face the restaurant adjacent. Those are under our canopy. The outfield, those cars typically back in and, with the lights facing the restaurant, so we can see when you need ketchup, you need us to take your tray. We run out, take your tray. And so there is no formal drive-through concept. In working with the Planning Commission, they brought up that, well, you're not technically a sit-down restaurant. They classified us that way and, made us, request the special exemption. We think we're consistent with the other businesses in our area. We know you're not familiar with Swenson's, and, we hope to soon be with our first location in Indiana.
Questions for petitioner?
So do I understand that there is no sit-down dining with your restaurant? All of the service is outside?
That is correct. It's a just under 1,600 square foot building. The only areas that are publicly accessible are the restrooms, which, have exterior facing doors, are the only areas accessible to the public. The rest of the building is a commercial kitchen, and some office space and storage, but no public inside the building besides the restrooms.
And all of the parking spaces are for customers, not just the ones next to the building?
All of the parking spaces are for customers, and we usually allot roughly 10 spaces for employee parking.
Okay.
And all orders are handled by human beings. There's no order board, like, you go and press the button and talk into a speaker.
Yeah, there is no
It's all
sonic
face-to-face.
speaker.
Gotcha.
This is all direct communication, or, you can phone in your order. You can phone in your order earlier, but the curb server runs out. You say, hey, I have a mobile order, and they run in, get your order, and bring it out. There's no speakers. There's no, noise outside besides the actual curb servers.
So there's a restaurant here that we should be familiar with. I don't know if you've done, how much homework you've done, but I'm equating this with Mug and Bun. Have you heard of that, or y'all know that, Mug and Bun? It's akin to that, isn't it? Would you agree, Bill? As you speak and as you paint that picture, to me, that's what I'm seeing. That's a restaurant that was independently owned and has been in this city for quite some time on the west side, Speedway area, not here, but that would be would you not agree?
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I'm
And-
sorry, I'm not familiar.
No,
with
that's
the
okay. Well,
concept.
go on their site maybe and take a look at it.
Absolutely.
And then if you're still here, make sure you get one of their giant tenderloins and rings, because they are awesome.
Yeah, the only question I was going to have really is, would be more of a DPR question, so I don't have any other questions.
If there are no more questions for petitioner, we'll open up the public hearing. Is anyone signed up to speak?
Only the petitioner was signed up to speak.
Yeah, okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Then we will close the public hearing. Discussion?
So one thing, in looking at this, again, special exception for drive-through on this property. And we're seeing, we've already approved special exception for drive-throughs on other lots in this development. So regardless of how the development is, the special exception to me, and I concur with staff's report, that it fits this development, the lot here. So the one thing that makes it tough is there's no drive-through window. It's drive in, drive out, but it is a unique concept, which from that aspect, it's nice to have a unique concept and be the first site for something like that in Indiana. So I like that. So I'm just going back to, as far as a special exception for drive-through, if that's how staff has basically interpreted this, I think this lot fits that special exception.
Any other discussion?
I agree with that. I think it feels a little bit like because there's nothing in the ordinances that specifically meets this particular commercial use. So it feels like, well, what is the best fit? And I feel like that makes sense. By definition, well, maybe not by definition, but I would think that by definition, because of the type of restaurant, this is their business model. This is what they do. I don't think there would, and perhaps the petitioner can come back. I don't see that there would be a request for a standard drive-through in addition to what they already do, because this is what they do. This particular setup is their business model.
Okay. Anyone else? And just, I'm fine with the recommendations of staff to the extent that this is really needed. And Mitchell, you want to weigh in on whether it's needed or not?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of whispering to Ian a little bit about is kind of what Catherine also mentioned is, I looked through the definition of drive-through and it doesn't really help us much. It just basically says the transferring of food from the restaurant to a motor vehicle. And it doesn't say running motor vehicle or moving motor vehicle at a slow pace or anything like that. So I agree with Catherine that it's kind of unique in that it doesn't quite fit into our zoning ordinance. And that's when situations like that is when I always just defer to staff and their interpretation of what is the best way to view this. And that's what I asked Ian is, if we're not calling this a drive-through, then how do we label this square around that little building? Is that just ingress egress? And if that were the case, then I would say that the appellant wouldn't need to be here at all. But I think staff is correct in their interpretation for drive-through on this case. And I think going back to what you said earlier, I think this is something that probably could be fleshed out a little bit in the new UDO and something to analyze further at the Plan Commission level.
Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve SE 2201, a special exception required under the permitted use table in Chapter 27 of the Town of Avon zoning ordinance to allow a drive-through facility in Tier 1 of the US 36 Overlay District, subject to the following condition. Approval is subject to the review and approval of a development plan review petition in accordance with Section 4-8.3 of the Avon zoning ordinance, on the basis that it has satisfied all the requirements for special exceptions under state law.
We have a motion by Mr. Guckenberger. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Inman. Any discussion? Ready for a roll call vote?
Paul Guckenberger,
4.
Ann Inman,
4.
Catherine Ransberg,
4.
Marcy Tashler,
4.
Marcus Turner.
4. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I got online and you can grasp a lot of by going online.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
I can guarantee you'll enjoy our food, so hopefully,
Sounds good.
hopefully later this year.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're going to move on. I'm going to start the the signatures while we get public comment going on. So we're going to open up public comment. Is anyone wishes to speak?
Hello. I think that there was a gentleman waiting, but I think he wants to talk to the town council. And he just confused. I'm going to give him the town council calendar.
Well,
He may choose to speak.
do we need
I'm
to give you a couple minutes?
Huh?
Do we need to give you a couple minutes? Because we got papers to sign.
I was going to hand him, I was still going to talk to you all on my own.
Okay.
But I was going to get him the calendar, so if you guys got,
You talk to him, we'll sign papers and we'll pick up.
How do you want me to handle signature?
We can get your signature at the next BZA hearing that you're able to attend.
Okay, that's fine. Or I'll be at the planning commission meeting on the 28th.
We can also do that. Hey, next time you're in, we can do it.
Okay.
I'm actually happy to.
okay.
See how everything goes.
Yeah, this is the zoning board, yeah. I would hate to get up there and talk to the zoning board. Thanks very much.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.
So we're good. Did you want to speak during public comment or do you want us to close the meeting and?
No, I can speak during the public
Okay.
comment. Yeah, I'm just here. I'm Bill Peoples. I'm the planning director. Everyone, I have handed over, as you well know, the responsibilities as your planner to Ian, the senior planner. Daniel, who is our GIS coordinator right here. We're going to cross-train him as an urban planner as well. And so he is going to occasionally come in and help you all out or help Ian out with some Board of Zoning Appeals cases. And we're going to start him out easy. So the next drive-through case that comes on the 36 corridor comes your way, he'll probably be the planner that will come and guide you on that one. But I told you I would come occasionally, and if you got stuff you want to say to me or you want comments or anything like that, that's what I'm here for. I just want you to know your planning director's here for you if you ever need it. A little bit of comments on the previous case. We didn't want to interpret the ordinance to require a special exception, but we didn't feel, once we read the definition, we didn't feel we had any choice. Ian and I went back and forth on it. We probably spent a half hour talking about this, and I was going, I just don't want to. And then I went, nah, it hits the standard. So we may have to change the definition. While you were talking, and I didn't want to get up here and interrupt you on that one. We actually have a standard in the ordinance for to-go spots. So a to-go spot, like you get in a lot of these places, is separate from a drive-through facility. And so that's the reason why you'll see these restaurants that have to-go spots, and they're not considered drive-throughs for the case of the ordinance. In this particular case, we felt that it met that ordinance definition, even though neither one of us wanted to require them to come get a special exception through you guys. So we may work on the ordinance a little bit, not in the near term, because we are literally this close to having the new UDO adopted. It went to the town council at the last town council meeting. Town council had 4 or 5 changes. They're remanding it back to the plan commission with those changes. I would anticipate that the plan commission will adopt those changes, and then you will have a new UDO on the 1st of April of this year. Unfortunately, one of the other things I was doing over there was check the definition of a drive-through in the new UDO, and it's pretty much the same as the one in the current ordinance. So he and I and Daniel will probably massage that ordinance, and once we next time we do an ordinance revision or an update, we'll change that definition so we're not routing. Although I don't think you're going to see a plethora of drive-ins coming to you for special exceptions. We do think it's sort of superfluous and a waste of your time to send a drive-in restaurant to you. And you're right, it is, Smug and Bun is identical to what they were going to do. So that's it. I'm here for any questions. I'm here for any comments, anything that you guys want to tell me. You want me to counsel Ian for some breach of etiquette, we can do that. But I'd be happy to just get out of your way and let you adjourn.
Okay.
Thank
I would
you.
just say that I think Ian does a very, very good job with the staff reports. I've been really impressed. So I don't know if that's due to your mentoring or due to you staying out of his way, but he's done a very good job.
It's staying out of his way for the most part.
A healthy mix of both, honestly.
Yeah. I'm there when he needs questions answered, and when he doesn't need questions answered, I leave him alone.
Anyone have anything, planning director? Anything else for the good of the cause? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.